Good day, chess world. So we continue with endgame number 2 from Capablanca's Best Chess Endings as we follow on this wonderful series. Here we have, in simple terms, a amazing position that Capablanca has built against Corzo. Again, as game 1, if you go to the earlier video, it is against Corzo in their match to establish who's the best that Cuba has to offer at the time. And here, what we're going to learn in this game is very much a demonstration of plan number 2, which is in the end game. Plan number 1 is attack your opponent's weak pawns. Plan number 2 is use your pass pawns. And we're going to see this here because clearly, fundamentally, Capablanca has what we call a one position, the dirty word of chess. Because how many times have you had it in a chess game where you are winning, things are going so very well for you, and then you miss the opponent's resources, and it is you who ends up losing the game? So that's why we say in chess, the hardest thing to do is win a one game. And here we're going to learn from Capablanca this approach to ensure that the opponent does not get themselves back into the game. So first and foremost, let's talk about why white is so much better in this position. Number one, they have two pieces for a rook, and that's a big deal. The two pieces generally are worth much more than a rook. I hope you'll learn that from this game as well. In simple terms, the knight and the bishop can do two different jobs at once, while the rook can do one thing. Also, if the knight and bishop were to target something, the rook cannot defend that something. So in this case, the rook's best chance is to get active and on the 7th rank. And here Capablanca immediately starts with the right approach that you should think about. What would you do? You're playing with the white pieces, things are going well. How would you approach it? And I know it might seem a bit strange to think that there is a best move, optimal move in this position, but certainly there is. So what I want to highlight to you is the mental approach of what would my opponent do if they had the move. So they certainly would like to get their rook in the game, rook to f8, and then invade over here. So we need to take the energy out of that. And number two, they would like to get their king in the game. So Capablanca plays a great move, knight e7. The point being that the king can no longer join the game at all. It is boxed onto the side of the board. Big plus, preventing their king from getting active. Then the second advantage is now after the opponent plays rook f8, he plays king g2. He prevents the invasion on his side of the board so that the rook cannot get as active as it would like in this position. So the opponent plays h5, trying to generate a pass pawn. What should we do? Plan number one, we should be attacking the opponent's weak pawns. What weak pawns? There's nothing that we can target here. Why? Because getting to attack g5 and h5 will be very challenging. They're also not fixed, they're not tied down. So that creates a new bit of a problem. So what I want to highlight here for you is plan number 2. Use your pass pawn. Now, we should not just push our pawn to its doom. We must make sure that we have the necessary support for it to be successful. And that's what he does here. Pawn d6. So the opponent plays g4. Capablanca says, no problem. I will take with my pawn. Pawn takes on g4, taking it easy in this position and carrying on with those threats. Now we get pawn takes back. And in simple terms, he now has to set up a very clear plan. So he would like to push and get promotion in. But in order to do that, he needs the help of the bishop. So Capablanca's plan here is we need to gain control of this promotion square. We cannot do that with knight c6. Also, we do need to be aware that the opponent could bring their rook and put pressure onto our pawn. So he plays a very nice move, bishop to e5. And here, black finally gets the king back into the game. King to h6. Very nice indeed. Now, this is a great example of don't overplay things. Try to make sure that you are looking for the opponent's resources, because Capablanca wants to simply push the pawn and then sets it up to get support and then seek to promote. But there is a problem. So this is why we use the language to say use your passed pawn. Because if we push d7, as what Capablanca did, we need to have a plan of what are we going to do after rook d8. Oh no, our poor pawn. Our poor pawn. What are we going to do? Has he blundered because he wanted to play bishop c7, but now the pawn is under attack? Well, no, Capablanca hasn't blundered. He just has a very pretty solution to his problem. We need something to defend this pawn. Can the bishop do it? No, because it's the wrong color. It must be the knight. So he plays this very nice combo, knight g8 check. The point being that the knight will skip back to f6, defend the pawn, and then the bishop will go to c7. But of course, the rook can just capture the knight. Why is this? This is a blunder. Well, of course, he has to play this move here. And it's such a clever little idea from Capablanca, since now he has control of the promotion square. So king g6 promotes, captures, bishop takes. Wonderful. We're up a piece. This game should be finished. Our opponent will simply resign. Well, no. Corzo does not resign. Why? Because he has a dream. He has a hope. There is a possibility that he could get himself a draw. You see, because we describe this bishop as the wrong color bishop for this rook pawn. Now, why that's important is because if we just go into this little position for you to imagine, well, can we win with white? No. We can huff and puff, but we cannot blow black's position away. So here, h4, h4, no, doesn't do anything. If we just push the pawn, they'll keep moving up and down. They'll stay in this corner. And there is no prospect for us to get that king out. The moment we get the bishop involved, stalemate. And if the king is away, they will continue to move up and down. So this is the dream that he has. He would like to basically trade all of these pawns for this b pawn and then get the king into that corner, and he has a draw. So there is still, shall we say, some technical issues for us to solve. Now let's talk about for your games. This is a great lesson. How do we convert? Well, we must remember our plans. Plan number one, attack the opponent's weak pawns. So g4 is isolated. Yes, it's passed, but we want to get pressure. So the opponent plays pawn to b5. Capablanca starts with king to f2. He realizes he cannot win this pawn. That is crucial. Why? Because it's on a light square. So what Capablanca starts with is this understanding to say, how does my opponent get a draw, a result? There's no win for the opponent here. Well, my opponent would like to run their king in and then trade off this b pawn. If they can trade off that b pawn, they can get that draw that we've seen. So Capablanca starts with the idea and says, no, I will make sure that the king cannot enter onto my pawns. So king e5, king to d3, king d5, king to c3. And this is now very important because the opponent pushes g3. What should we do? We need to get our bishop to stop their pawn. How? Well, here you see the beauty and the power of the bishop. You can move so quickly across the board, everything is covered. No problem. So pawn to a5, and this is where it becomes very important. We can see their plan. They would like to trade off this b pawn if they can. Don't forget this draw. This is the idea that they want. So the win for white is with the b pawn. That's why white pushes b4. And of course, let's understand things. The opponent decides to play this very clever, tricky move, king e4. But of course, we can just take the pawn. We've won a pawn. This is wonderful. No. Then we have double a pawns. This is then a draw. The king runs back into the corner. King to c6, let's say bishop to g1. They do not care. It doesn't matter that we have the double pawns because we cannot force their king out of the square. So you're learning a wonderful bit of technique as well. The wrong colored bishop rook pawn. This would not be true if the pawns were on the other side and promoted on a different color. So this is why in this position, Capablanca realizes, nope, I cannot take. He plays bishop to b6. The opponent plays king to d5. And of course, as we've looked at, we cannot take. So the king moves to d3. king c6, bishop to g1, patience. We also saw that in the last one. Slowly on the clock, slowly with the moves. So king d5, he plays bishop h2, king c6, and this is so very smart how he uses the bishop to take control of these central squares because, okay, plan number one, attack the opponent's weak pawns. Well, we've established this pawn on g2 is weak. We can target this pawn. We can run across the board and go win it. Is that the path? No, because the opponent will counterattack. He's going to get his king to come in over here to launch that kind of counterattack we do not want to see. So let's just unpack that for a moment. If we did not get this correctly done, king c6, if we went king to e2, they would play king to d5. And now suddenly in this position, if we play king to f2, oh, of course, king c4, white wins, pawn takes with a simple win. No, we've seen this problem before. The king will come back. It is in the square of the pawn, and it now will capture it, simply stating if the pawn moves forward, can the king enter that square? Yes, it can, so it can catch the pawn and have a draw. Now the problem that we see is that the bishop would need to move to protect this pawn. He needs to keep a b pawn. What is happening? Because if it captures, the pawn takes back. And now king b3, what would we do with the white pieces to win? Of course, the pawn was going to break away and it's going to promote. So that does not work. But black does have a very valuable lesson for us to learn. Fix your opponent's weak pawns so they cannot move. Then you go win them. And that is the detail. Pawn to a4 with king here, capturing the pawn. Wonderful for black. So in this position, this is not what we want to see from the white pieces. We must stop that counterattack. And right in the get-go, we have a rather simple win. If it's not this pawn that we go after, what other weak pawn do we have? b5. It's fixed, and we will simply push their king out the way. King d4. Corzo plays pawn to a4 in the desperate dream of one day being able to get in over here. And of course, that does nothing because now king e5, king b6, and Capablanca comes along, and he is going to win all of these pawns. And that is then a simple win to convert with this b pawn. Very, very instructive. And let me just unpack for you quickly. King takes b5, the opponent takes. By all means, you can take this pawn if you want. You don't really need it. The king moves, we push the pawn. The king goes back. Save this pawn, don't bring it. Only win with the b pawn. Why? Because if you bring both pawns, you have a great risk of stalemate. Already, we have this little stalemate problem. King a8. King a6. It's stalemate. It's a draw. Oh, no, we've got them caught out very cleverly. Push pawn, then we take, and we've solved the problem now. I just want to highlight to you, don't get the bishop involved, leave the bishop out. The point being, we push check, king here, and then you can use the bishop to set up a very pretty mate. Notice the winning technique. We use our pass pawn. We prepare the pass forward with that pawn, and then at the same time, we hold this pawn up in case we need waiting moves or something. So overall, to summarize, what we can see from this wonderful one from Capablanca is number one, how do we convert that material advantage? And part of the goal is that plan number two, use your pass pawn. You can see how efficient and effective the two minor pieces were at doing different jobs. Then it allowed him to basically force through the pawn and win material. Then our job was not done because there was limited material on the board. So I hope you've also learned about this concept of the wrong color bishop. And then the other technique of how do we convert when we have this one material in game, this challenging theme. Well, we look at what is the opponent's best chance to counterattack. We take it away from them. So join me for game 3 in the next video. And if you want the notes on this series, sign up on the mailing list in the link, and we'll continue on the exploration.